Man, okay, it's been a minute since I've stood in front of this microphone. Hi. All right. So I know it's been 2 years since this episode was due, and I made it 2 years ago, as promised, but I never uploaded it, and you're probably wondering why. Well, I don't know. I've done a little poking around on Reddit, and I think everyone knows, but life got in the way. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to jump in here and do all those doom and gloom things. I kind of got tired of doing that, so I just didn't make the episode. But I got to say that the world's different now. I'm a different person than the one that made those 99 episodes before this over those 5 years. And things just aren't the same. It's not all bad, though. I mean, don't get me wrong. This show is my creative outlet for all those years, and what a creative outlet it was. And, when you're just not feeling that way anymore, like the creativity just sort of goes away. Well, I've done a lot in the 2 years' time since then, and even though things have totally changed, I mean, I left flying entirely and came back to that, and we'll talk about that. There's been some family stuff. I think we made good progress there. But the show, as far as it's concerned, well, I don't know what the future is going to hold. I mean, I honestly, you don't know how many times I came up to this microphone and pretty much was going to say, hey, 100, this is going to be the last one. Like, I'm done. I'm out. But I can't bring myself to do that. I do want the show to go on, but it's going to have to change a little bit. So maybe it's the beginning of just a new leaf. I might change the name of the show. Maybe I won't get that crazy. I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm going to give you 100. Better late than never, right? I made it 2 years ago, like I said, and we're going to do this one, at least as some sort of last hurrah of the way it always used to be, right? With all the music and the edits. And we're going to do 100 the way that it should be. And what it's going to be in the future, I don't know. Any suggestions? I'm actually open to hearing them. Let me know. I want to give you a good show that you want to listen to, but at the same time, I have to make something that speaks my own truth. So we'll see what that's going to be moving forward. Anyway, all that to say, I'm really excited to finally release this episode for you all. Episode 100. It's been a long time coming. Thank you to everybody who listened to the show for all those years since 2017. And the podcasting game, has it moved on since then. But, the show has always been a great part of my life, and hopefully yours too, and will continue to be. And, at least if I can make your commute to the airport that much more fun, then I guess I'll feel good. But all that to say, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for not unsubscribing in these intervening 2 years. And, the future is looking bright. So all that said, welcome to episode 100, Podcasting on a Plane.
This is Lima Hotel out of DVO up in Northern California. And while Brandon's a CFI, he's not acting as your CFI, nor is he your mechanic, your doctor, your shrink, or your spouse. But he has made 100 kick-ass episodes of Variety Pack of quality. And I'd recommend that anybody go listen to the talks with Chad Fortenberry, and then come back a few months later and listen to him again, and then come back a couple months later and listen to him again. Take care. Congrats on 100 episodes, and make us 100 more, please.
Oh my God. All right. I'm sorry. I can't believe that used to be the theme music. But even more surprising, here we are, episode number 100. That's right. It finally happened. We made it. I couldn't be happier. This is a show where we talk about the backstory behind all that happens in Airworld as told from my viewpoint here at West Coast Delta Tower. And today, well, of course, it's going to be a trip down memory lane. And I got to say, this show's been a long way from that first episode I recorded into a USB mic sitting there at my desk and where I read the accident report from the, at the time, only plane crash I'd been through. But back then, I didn't really know where the show would go. I definitely wasn't the only aviation podcast in town. I didn't really know if Q&A would be the best, or if I should go a little more down the journalism road, or what. It's definitely a fun way to entertain my dreams of being a audio engineer that I had ever since I visited a recording studio in second grade. But bottom line is I kind of mishmashed it all together and did a whole bunch of all of it. But one thing I think has been mentioned, and well, maybe I just haven't said it bluntly, is that I never wanted it to be a show about shop talk and the news. Not that there's anything wrong with that, believe me. The bottom line is just it's been done. It's been done well, and by people that will be even appearing in this episode. Plus, it's not really my personality anyway, I guess. But the podcast is kind of like a story time because, well, I like stories. And as you know, Rob, Mark, and I have talked extensively about this on so many episodes, and it was really one of the things that started our friendship and our collaborations. Like when I read all those 737 MAX stories, which, yes, I realized was technically, quote unquote, the news, but there was a story there, a huge one. And that's what I want to bring you. And that's my favorite part of this whole thing is sharing the stories and hearing back from you about how they affected you and hopefully how they helped, or at least entertained you. And there's one feedback today that really shows that like none other. But before that, another story. So we aviation podcasters aren't exactly famous, right? I mean, it is cool to have some fans. I'm not going to lie. People know your name, you don't know theirs. That's what Homer Simpson said. It's great. But what's kind of cool about aviation podcast fans is that they're often not just fans of your show, but fans of aviation as a whole. And there was one such person who may have been the biggest aviation fan who ever lived. And his name was Glenn. And he was known as the New Zealand aircraft fan. Glenn flew literally halfway around the world every year to attend Oshkosh. And you know what? Let's read a story about him from EAA. It's from July 29th, 2022, by Aaron Hens. Friends gather to honor an AirVenture regular. Glenn Towler, a beloved member of the aviation community, passed away after a brief battle with cancer. According to his good friend Hillel Glazer, EAA lifetime member, Glenn would save up all year to make the journey from New Zealand to Oshkosh each summer. Quote, he was just this all-around avid aviation geek, warbirds especially, Hillel said. He really loved the genre, he was a man of modest means, and he saved up pretty much all year to come to AirVenture every year, which also happened to coincide with his birthday. He was just super, super humble, and that made him so friendly that you just can't help but enjoy being around him. Using his online presence, Glenn made friends all around the world, including EAA's own managing editor. Quote, as is more common than not these days, Glenn and I first met virtually via social media, said Hal Bryan, EAA's managing editor. When we finally shook hands in person, it felt like we were already old friends. Glenn's passion for aviation was unabashed and infectious, and I always looked forward to seeing him at AirVenture. Our convention will be a little darker and a little quieter for me this year. I miss him already. Glenn was passionate about a lot of things, such as aviation photography, his service in both the British and New Zealand armies, and of course, finding free food. Quote, he knew every which way possible to get free food and drink at AirVenture, Hillel explained. In fact, according to an article on the EAA blog written by Glenn, free food is what first got him to AirVenture in 2012. Glenn said, I was following a blog called Air Pigs that's run by my now good friend, Mart Klepper, Glenn wrote in 2019. He had a photo caption contest for a photo of a Cessna 152 with large four-bladed propellers. My caption was, quote, does this prop make my plane look small? I won the caption contest, and my prize was a bacon sandwich at EAA AirVenture Oshkosh, so I thought, why not? I've never been, and it looks interesting. So I booked my flights and bought tickets for 3 days. 10 years after his first AirVenture, friends of Glenn have come together to raise money in his memory. With the initial plan of raising enough money for a brick at the Brown Arch, donations quickly surpassed the goal. We collected over $6,000 to buy Glenn a brick at the Brown Arch, where Glenn endeavored to arrange a group photo each year of all of his online friends he could only see in person that one time a year, Hillel said. We also purchased a memorial plaque at the memorial wall and donated the rest to other EAA programs. In his honor, these friends got together again, meeting at the Brown Arch on Thursday for one final group photo. We knew his love for aviation, his love for warbirds, his photography, and his pride in the work that he'd done in the countries he served, Hillel said. It was just bizarrely tragic in how quickly he left. So what does that matter? Well, because Glenn was one of the very first patrons of this show. The third, I believe. He was a regular contributor, and we even met up and went flying when he was traveling to Oshkosh in 2019. And on Facebook, he called it his Memory of the Year. So why does that matter here? Well, because I want to dedicate this episode, number 100, to the memory of Glenn Towler. This one's for you, man. So going all the way back to those days, back to patron number 3, back to the first bump this show ever got where somebody might actually want to listen to it. And the first place that Glenn heard of me was on the Airline Pilot Guy show. And I'll tell you what, one thing that show does better than just about any other is just to create an amazing community around it. That's why I listened. I can definitely attribute a few friendships to it. And when this show was just a fledgling couple of recordings, Captain Jeff really helped me give this show its first bump. So the major special thanks to Captain Jeff and the crew for not only that, but for doing what they do and always being there with their infectious enthusiasm, especially when I really needed it. Speaking of which, here's Captain Jeff now.
Hey, Brandon. Captain Jeff here. It seems like just yesterday that I learned of your podcast. I was intrigued to hear about your plane crash experience in your youth. I was also curious how you would combine your piloting experience with your job as an air traffic controller, something that, as far as I knew at the time, had never been done in this world of podcasting. I was captivated by your deep, thoughtful, soulful voice and your ability to transform aviation stories into a rich audio tapestry. I'll never forget our meetup in the summer of 2018 at Stone Brewing. Great experience. I know your life has been through a series of ups and downs, literally, and I'm so happy that you're back where you should be, podcasting. I also know you've achieved and experienced a number of milestones in your life, but in the world of podcasting, 100 episodes is huge. Congratulations, Brandon. 100 episodes in the can. Awesome. Looking forward to the 200th episode in the future. But don't take too long. I won't live forever.
Well, thank you again, Captain Jeff, for sending that in. It really means a lot. Way back in episode 1, I would have never thought I'd be reading another accident report on episode 100. I promise I wasn't waiting for this, although I couldn't have timed it any better. But the report finally happened to come out a year and a half later, last week. So what the heck? It's episode 100, right? Let's read the report from the second flight. I wish I'd never boarded. The airplane had just received an annual inspection, and the pilot and the flight instructor were flying it back to its home base. The pilot did not have a current medical certificate, and the flight instructor, me, was on board to act as pilot in command. On departure in a slow climb passing about 1,800 feet, the engine began to surge, and it sounded like the throttle was cycling between open and closed. The airplane began to lose altitude. The flight instructor declared an emergency and turned toward a racetrack. They flew downwind for the racetrack, but determined they could not safely land there. Therefore, they elected to land on an interstate highway. Spotting a gap between cars, the flight instructor made a forced landing on the interstate, and during the landing sequence, the airplane struck several vehicles and came to rest angled towards the interstate median barrier. A post-accident examination of the airframe and engine revealed no evidence of mechanical failures and malfunctions that would have precluded normal operation. The reason for the partial loss of engine power could not be determined based on the available evidence. The NTSB determines the probable cause of this accident to be the partial loss of engine power for reasons that could not be determined, which resulted in a forced landing on an interstate highway and subsequent collision with vehicles. There we go. Short and sweet. And you know what? I know what you're all thinking. No, the airplane did not run out of fuel. No, I did not run a tank dry. Now, believe me, that was the first place everyone went. And I'll tell you what, we are going to do quite some discussion of this incident on future episodes. Let's put it that way. But that was definitely determined not to be the case. I have video of them sumping every single tank. Yes, there was fuel in it. It just wasn't getting to the engine. Why? Well, that's a whole different story. And believe me, it is quite a story. So, in good time, we will discuss that on here. The lawsuits have just about been settled, and we'll be able to, discuss it freely. But that being said, you can look forward to that in a future episode. Now, for a little more backstory and to kind of tie these things together with a listener feedback, I actually sent to Captain Jeff and the APG crew a little while back a feedback, which was in response to the 19 Mike Tango Bonanza crash at White Plains a few months ago. It really covers how it all went down and some thoughts that I've had about flying lately. So without further ado, here is said feedback, which aired on the Airline Pilot Guy show a few months back. Hey, Captain Jeff and the crew and the APG communities at Bravo Golf out here at West Coast Delta. Long time no see. So I'll add some comments on the 19 Mike Tango accident out there at Westchester. It hit a little close to home for me, not just because I'm a controller and, sitting there listening to the replay and how the controller worked. It was definitely something special. But also a year ago, I actually had the privilege of having to dead stick a Saratoga onto a freeway. It was an airplane that we had picked up from an annual inspection, and let's just say things didn't go so well. And that's something I practiced for 1,000, maybe 2,000, maybe 3,000 times. I don't know with students, but so many times. And it's a good thing, because if it ever actually does happen to you, I can tell you right now that when that adrenaline hits you, when everything goes silent and you realize that there's nothing you can do to get that engine running again, pretty much all you have is instinct. I can only imagine what it felt like for those poor individuals given their set of circumstances that night. It was nighttime, low IMC, and an airplane that doesn't make a very good glider. The one bit of luck that they had on their side, though, was an outstanding controller at New York TRACON, and as you all commented, I also can't think of a single thing that he could have done any better, and I hope that he gets an Archie League medal for it. Now, unfortunately, the occupants didn't survive, so I'm not sure if that makes him ineligible, but either way, hats off to that controller for an outstanding performance. And I've been up in the tower, not worked one, but I've had to sit there and watch an awful fatal accident happen at our airport as well. And I may share that story on my own show one of these days, but I can only hope that if I'm ever in the New York TRACON controller situation for something like this, I can only hope that I can do as well as he did. So during the discussion in episode 554, Nick C. mentioned that the comments in the Bonanza Society comments and forums and things like that fell into more or less two camps. The first one was that maybe this would have gone better if he had been put on a straight-in stabilized approach, and then the other one was maybe if he had spiraled over the airport. Now, believe me, I know all about the comments section because I have one of my own from my accident. So since we all kind of know better here, let's just add a third option, and that is actually exactly what this pilot and this controller did. And it's basically what my instincts would have been, and apparently theirs were too, which would be to point more or less towards the airport and then angle yourself towards what's going to effectively be a short final to a runway, or at least something flat that you can land on, and then make adjustments to speed and altitude or whatever you need to do, because you're only going to get one shot at this. So going straight in on like an ILS, I think the thing was falling like a rock. That wasn't really an option. Spiraling over the airport would actually be the thing the FAA would recommend. That's the training standard in the ACS for what you do once you get over the airport is spiral, or your landing surface, I should say, spiral down and sort of have a key position, and then you get that one shot at your final approach. And that all works great in day VFR conditions, but in night IMC with a 300-foot ceiling, it just wasn't going to happen. Had it been day, though, I think they would have made it just fine. So let's talk about luck. How much luck goes into something like this? A lot of it, actually, I'd say. My engine failure occurred in some of the finest daytime VFR weather that Southern California could possibly provide. Luck? Well, definitely a bunch of it. Had it happened at pretty much any other time during the flight, my options would have been pretty bad. Had there been traffic on that road, it wouldn't have been an option. And I don't think the outcome would have been so good, since my only other choice was a lagoon with a sandbar in the middle of it. So even though we had briefed what we would do if that engine quit at any other time during the flight, this was clearly the best time it could have happened. So maybe we did luck out. But also, the reason we made the flight on that day was because the weather was so good. We intended to pick it up the day before, but conditions were marginal V to IFR, and the thought of what if made it pretty easy to just say, you know what, we're going to wait another day. So luck then, or just a better decision? Probably a little bit of both. But this is a flight that was coming right out of annual. There was definitely a fair amount of trepidation around it. But this Bonanza, well, this one wasn't right out of annual. Nobody knew something like this would happen. I mean, the plane probably worked fine on the way in. The pilots are qualified and experienced enough to be there. So how could things have gone so horribly wrong? Well, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a co-owner of the accident aircraft on an IFR proficiency flight that was about 6 months prior. On that day, the ceilings were between 800 and 1,300 in the area, tops to about 4,000. And I told him that, you know what, man, I don't actually really want to make this flight today. He sort of gave me a weird and slightly annoyed look. And he's like, well, what are your personal minimums then? Like, why is this CF double I that I'm paying to practice instrument stuff with me not comfortable flying an approach down to conditions that pretty much qualify as VFR? Well, fair enough. So I told him, my issue is that most of the terrain that we'd be overflying in the vectoring stage to all these approaches is semi-mountainous terrain where the ceilings were low to maybe even embedded cumulogranite. If our engine quit, we had a fire, or anything catastrophic really, there would be no outs, no options. So we decided to fly some approaches at a different airport where there were at least some nearby options, like a long highway or another close airport with passable weather, or even the coast where there probably weren't likely to be many beachgoers or surfers on a day like that if, worst came to worst. But he told me he never really thought of it that way. Like during the vectoring portion and en route, it didn't really matter what was beneath you. But he thought of personal minimums as very important. And I said, well, they are very important. I mean, of course. On a proficient day, I, of course, too, would not be bothered to fly an ILS down to about 200.5, just as long as there's going to be a runway in front of me when we pop out. But if something happens, you can come out of the bottom of the clouds with about 4 seconds to find out what you're going to hit, well, that's a place no pilot should ever be. But back to Westchester, I'm sure that the Bonanza pilot knew the risk he was taking. Blasting off into darkening skies with low ceilings beneath, it's something that I used to do all the time, too. He had no reason we know of not to trust the airplane. So, he made a bet. But he was dealt a bad hand that day. He played it the best he could. But unfortunately, the house still won. In the aftermath of a tragedy like this, there are always lessons to be learned. And I'm sure that in a year or two, I'll be watching this again as a case study in one of my air traffic training scenarios or something like that. But formal training aside, hopefully we can all just remember how this tragedy played out and incorporate it into our gut feelings that we have when we're making those all-important go, no-go choices. Because we're choosing to fly IFR in a single engine, single pilot, basically single point of failure type light aircraft. There's a lot more to it than just personal approach minimums. So I want to emphasize that I'm not making these comments to be judgmental. The accident pilot doesn't seem to have broken any rules, written or unwritten. The pilot and the aircraft seem to be in perfectly good, working, reasonable order and flying within parameters. The pilot even made an excellent decision to divert when he noticed performance wasn't up to par. It's just that a single point of failure made the one and only engine stop working. So, through probably no fault of the pilot's own, he was left in a nearly impossible situation. So my comments here, again, are not to be judgmental. I think the pilot did everything he possibly could, and he was just dealt an impossible hand. But I just want to urge all small aircraft pilots to learn from this tragedy and just always see that bigger picture when you fire up that one and only engine and decide to go slip the surly bonds of Earth. All right, well, for a show founded on aviation enthusiasm, that pretty well sums up where I've been. So, with a renewed shot of dopamine, let's continue on with episode number 100 with some more feedback.
Hello, Brandon. Congratulations on 100 episodes. And I just wanted to say your experiences of being a twice plane crash survivor, and certainly your most recent experience, just really struck home with me. I've had my own aircraft incident, and it definitely shook me as well. And the mental game of flying is just as passionate as the skills and the knowledge. So thanks again for your podcast, and keep them coming.
Hey, Brandon. Here's a big hello from Patreon supporters, occasional West Coast Delta visitors, and sometime podcasting on a plane contributors, Dan and Phil in 8 Papa Delta. Congratulations on reaching the 100 episode milestone. We've listened to all of the first 99 and look forward to each new one. Hope to see you soon on the tarmac. Bye.
I get asked pretty much all the time what my favorite episode was, and I think without a doubt, I'd have to say it was the Spy Week series. Not just because the content itself came out so well, but because it was just an incredible trip and an incredible week in a place that I never would have expected to find such a thing. The fact that they invited me to participate in that and make content that'll be used at the museum for years to come, and the fact that I actually got to hang out with and drink beer with SR-71 pilots and crews from back in the day, just an incredible thing. Sort of my summer of '69 moment, or maybe the Sandlot, something like that. But something where no matter what, I don't think I'll ever have feelings like that again. But it was amazing. And then a close second would be Concorde Week with John Hutchinson. We obviously don't need to rehash why that is, but those were amazing episodes too. John Hutchinson shares his thoughts on the Air France crash are unbelievable. And if you haven't heard that, please go back and listen. It'll sort of change your perspective on how you see a lot of things. But those episodes, I think, are definitely my favorites. You know, one episode I really enjoyed making, too, was the Millionaires Unit episodes. They were really fun because there was a fun event that went with them. But it was just a sort of an amazing thing to meet with movie makers and go to an actual movie premiere. And I made a vlog about it back in my vlog days. Yes, that's still up there if you want to go find it. But it was an amazing time. And then on a slightly more somber note, one that sticks out that I really want to talk about was the episode I did about Dick Collins when he passed away, because not only did he affect my flying career in a big way, but after I did, his daughter actually reached out to me and sent me some really cool memorabilia of his that was in his office. And it was this sort of out of the blue connection with a family that I didn't expect. And looking back, it's definitely one that sticks out, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it here in my favorite episodes. And of course, there's all the great times we've had with Rob and Chad. I don't know how many of those we've done at this point, but they're my favorites. And before I forget too, one of the way back early ones, the Great East West ATC Throwdown. It was with this guy. You might know him.
Bravo Golf. Congratulations on episode 100. The show just keeps getting better each episode, and I want to comment on the impressive content unique to the aviation podcast space and relevant to an audience on either side of the aviation spectrum, from commercial pilots to controllers to aviation enthusiasts to the biggest of airplane nerds. You've got something for everyone. Keep up the fantastic work and be proud of your incredibly refined and mastered audio product. You're serving the aviation community hour by hour and filling a void in the podcast space we didn't know existed before your show. Anytime you want to do another East Coast, West Coast collaboration, let us know. Cheers. Romeo Hotel.
All right, man. Thanks, RH. And while he was talking, I remembered a couple more episodes I wanted to talk about that are my all-time favorites. The Nothing by Chance episode. It may not have anything to do with Concords or SR-71s or air disasters or anything like that, but it actually told a real story, one that actually happened with an actual friend and an actual vintage biplane with actual history, and it paralleled the wonderful stories told by Richard Bach in Nothing by Chance. And if you haven't heard that one yet, I highly recommend you go back and give it some love. It's probably one of the most underappreciated episodes in the series, really. All right, well, I think it's about time we give somebody else a chance to talk. And this episode definitely would not be complete without an appearance by Rob Mark.
Well, I don't want to, as much as I'd like to, I don't want to do that if we're going to record this now, because that would sound a little funny, I think. Although I would like to have given you an attaboy for 100.
Well, no, this way you can just, like, live as we talk, you can just sit here and tell me how great I am for like 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I could do that.
Does that work for you?
Because I'm there, man.
Cool. Well, no, that might get awkward. But either way, here, I'll take my headphones off and walk out of the studio. Just text me when you're done, okay?
So tell me the direction you want to go with this. I'm not positive.
Well, I decided, this is episode 100, and you're our Five Timers Club. You're in the Five Timers Club, just like on SNL. So, I think you might even be like 7 times or more at this point. I think you've been on here more than even Chad or anyone else. So, I feel like
Wow.
you should actually get a slot on the show.
I think I want a jacket. In fact, I forget the jacket. I want a coat.
Okay, so all patrons listening to the show, please up your contributions because our new pledge goal is to get Rob a Letterman's jacket.
Are you recording right now?
Maybe.
Maybe. Oh my God. Okay, so here we are, episode 100. Brandon, I am so glad to be a part of number 100. The only problem, I do have a slight problem with it though, because at my advanced age, 100 doesn't seem that far away, and I'm not certain I should be really excited about that.
Well, the first thing you're going to do is come in here and downplay 100 episodes because you're old. Okay. No, anyway, it's so far on the horizon, you don't even need to think about it.
Okay.
How about
all
that?
right. Now
Is that better?
I feel better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just like when I was at episode, however many episodes old you are, that's what I thought too. It's so far in the future, and that's it, right? So.
Well, sure. And Airplane Geeks just went to, I think we just went through 740. And that's and you know what I think is the most important thing about this? I mean, we all try to cover great topics and things that we think people will be interested in, or news they can use, or techniques, or that kind of thing. But almost nobody realizes how much work really goes into a great podcast.
Yeah, no, especially the people who think they're going to go start one. But no, that's absolutely it. And I did the math on this thing. I should be on episode like 350 something right now, I think. I should be pushing 400, but whatever. That's just where we are. Everybody knows the backstory behind that. I won't tell the sob story any more times, but that's it takes a lot. And to all other aviation podcasters out there, I get it, Rob gets it, we get it. Like, we know how much work really goes into this, especially if you do it consistently every single week, like no matter what.
Absolutely. And it is a place that is ripe for burnout when you are working, especially if you're working alone.
Yeah, no, and that's just it. It's literally just me. I think what's the industry term for that? Pod fading?
I don't know. I didn't know there was a term
you
for
pod
it.
fade. If you make it past 10 episodes, you're probably going to stick with it. But if you make it to 100, then it's pretty much burned in the conscious forever.
Wow. I learn a great deal from you, but that's because you're on the other coast of the world.
That's right. That's where we know all this stuff. Like pod
Yeah,
fading.
that's true.
It's super important for daily life for most people.
Hey, my daughter works in Hollywood, man. I got it,
Well, so anyway, how you been? It's been a while since you've been on the show.
It has been a while, and I was just speaking before we actually started recording about not having flown for a while. And I had some health issues this year and a few other things. But you know what? I kind of think sometimes health issues and feeling like I should be flying and I'm not flying, and work and the economy and politics and, I think I know now why the dog climbs in the bed and puts the covers over his head.
Yeah, tell everyone about your dog. What's your dog's name and why?
His name is Archie, and he's a Rhodesian Ridgeback, for anybody that knows what that is. It's a big hound, and he weighs 106 pounds. And when he climbs up on the bed sometimes in the morning, he goes where he wants, even though sometimes he pushes me out of the way. And I go, hey, man, it's my bed. You don't get to come in and push me out of my bed. And then he just looks at me and goes, "Arr." And I go, yeah, well, okay, I'll take this piece over here, and then it works out.
Well, but why is his name Archie?
We named him, actually, we didn't. I named him after Archie Bunker. In fact, his crate that sits in our dining room is Archie's. It's not Archie's crate, it's Archie's bunker. Okay, well, anyway.
That's good. I like it though. Wait, wasn't the real Archie Bunker's or real character Archie Bunker's chair like in the Smithsonian or something like that?
Yes, it is. And if people don't know who Archie Bunker is, you have missed some really great comedy.
Okay, so you're here because it's episode 100, and of course you have been on the show. You're a podcasting on a plane / SNL 5-timers, if not 7 or 8 or 9 timers club by now.
So where's my jacket?
Well, see, that's the thing. So for all the patrons of the show, and those of you that are not, if you would like to join our pledge drive to get Rob Mark a Letterman's jacket for being on the show so many times, then please get your pledges in now. They are not tax deductible, but I will send you a picture of Rob smiling in his new Letterman's jacket if we can make our goal.
I don't think I'm tax deductible either. Well, it really doesn't matter, does it? And all I ever gave you was I clicked on the buy me a cup of coffee once, I think, or something.
Yeah, that's pretty one-sided, man.
It is actually. But so how is the world of aviation out there on the West Coast?
It's okay. We're busy again. I've had a ton of trainees. I just got one. Well, I have one left, and he will be my greatest work when he certifies. We'll just leave it at that.
That's another tough job. Watching someone try to learn the job of air traffic control, and it's an awful lot like being a flight instructor, because you don't want to fly around with your hand on the control wheel all the time, or it really shoots their confidence, or in this case, hand on the override button when you're listening to them. But you got to be close enough that you can jump in if they screw it up. And that always makes training pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I'm probably some sort of masochist, but actually I really enjoy it. And I don't know why. I guess it's just something about me in training has always just jived well, but I do enjoy it. And especially when they do certify. I had this weird moment. I'm not sure if I ever shared this on the show. I think I did once, but this was probably maybe 10 years ago. But we had this time where, that was sort of the end of the big air traffic hiring boom. And we had a lot of people get hired, and maybe they washed out of a higher level facility because, let's face it, nobody should have been put at SoCal TRACON that was like a bartender last week and has no aviation experience, right? That just isn't going to work. So a lot of people had to do a lot of jumping around to lower level facilities and things like that. And so I had certified, and I was an on-the-job training instructor. We call them OJTIs. And I had this weird moment where I was the controller in charge. I was back on the desk, and other people work in the control positions. And I realized that every airplane that was flying in the airspace at that point was from the flight school I used to work at, and all the instructors that were on there, because that's what I used to do, was basically all the CFI and multi-engine training, they were my students. And the 2 controllers that were working were also my trainees. And it was cool, but it was also, when I had this realization, I was like, oh my God, every person operating in this airspace right now was under my tutelage at some point. And I'm just going to walk off now and back away slowly and not make eye contact if anything happens. But it was kind of cool. It was really neat to see that. It was gratifying, but at the same time, it was mildly off-putting, and it was kind of weird how that all worked out. But maybe it was cathartic.
I just had a very odd thought. I mean, that somehow while this is all happening, all the thoughts and other items that you planted in their brains, and now Brandon pushes a little button and all of their brains turn into mush at the same time. And it's a horrible disaster. And it would make a great movie, I think.
Yeah,
But
see, instead of being an aviation journalist, you should have been a sci-fi writer.
yeah, I guess. Anyway, but no, listen, I think that, well, I was mentioning to you this story that I wrote for a magazine back in March of 1980 about my time as a controller, and I'm going to send it to you. Maybe we'll figure out something we can do with it. But it's amazing. I mentioned then that I really liked teaching people because if people don't understand the why behind it, they're just they're robots, and you can't have a student pilot out there flying a private, a commercial, any pilot or any controller behaving if they don't know why they do something. If they only do it because Brandon said, "Don't ever do that," I mean that they will never be able to operate on their own, and that's our job is to put those ideas across. But then when you watch it happen and you watch somebody take some of what you taught them, and some of what they've learned from someone else, and put it together and solve a problem that was never presented before, you go, wow, that is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And that's when, you say that you have those people that were, say, like that one was a really good student for whatever reason. But usually it's because, partly they take to heart what you say. But you can tell when somebody has the interest in really learning the why behind everything. And you can tell when they've done their homework as well. So it's really nice when, again, I used to do most of the CFI and multi-engine stuff. And by the time I got somebody there, they were a career track person. They weren't just like, hey, I want to get my private and go do whatever. I mean, they were like, they had the itch and they were far along too. So I loved doing those higher level discussions with them because, the why was more important almost than the how.
Absolutely.
I mean, you talk about your CFI, you spend hours and hours and hours just in the books and in the classroom and having discussions and teaching. And I mean, I don't know how many hours of flying I actually did for my CFI, but it's probably maybe 10, if that. It's just learning to fly from the right seat and land and, pretty much talk while you're doing everything. But other than that, I mean, it's all the stuff there's no new stuff. It's all just the same maneuvers. But the opportunity to sit down with people that really wanted to be there and were just motivated. I guess that's really what it all comes down to is motivation. But it was just so nice to work with those people. And then, at our airport, we do a fair amount of pilot outreach. At least I do. So, a lot of there's so much training in the Delta anyway. And so it's cool that they're training and they know that we're training upstairs too, which is pretty cool. And the biggest flight school on the field has actually been sending people by pretty regularly to have tours and visit and put faces to the voices. And it's been really nice because, that way everybody feels like they're in an environment where it's not like an us against them or I'm just going to piss off the tower or, what's this idiot pilot doing? We know they're training. They know we're training. And so it's a safe place to learn. And then, business gets done.
That's a very interesting point. And you mentioned that you're getting visitors up to your tower.
Yeah. Yep. Tower visits are back.
Ah, that's interesting because out here in the Midwest, it's still pretty much frowned upon. And if no matter who you ask, they kind of come up with the same, well, we're just not doing them right now.
Well, did you
why
show
not?
up with a pizza?
Well, see, that's a good point.
Well, because that's the new rule. That's official FAA policy now is that you can do a
I
tour.
see.
You don't need a mask, but you better bring donuts or a pizza.
I gotcha.
I'm kidding. That's not official policy, but unofficially, that's the policy.
I think you might be closer to the truth than you think because no matter who we talk to, they just say, whether FAA is just not allowing them. Well, who at because I'm such a geek, who at well, it's just you have to go up the chain, And I said, well, let's go up the chain. No, we can't, and and that's how
do you feel like you're talking in circles, Rob? Is that what's
yes,
happening?
exactly.
Okay. All right, here's how. All right, everybody listening, and I know I'm going to get something for something. This is going to come back to haunt me somehow. But here's what you do. See, you call and you say, hey, I'm calling because I'm the pilot of such and such over here, and I would like to send a bunch of pizzas over there. What time would be a good time for me to do that? Suddenly, everybody works better with it. I don't know what it is, man.
No, food. It's food. It's food, and I think it's the fact that someone thought enough of the recipient to say, "Hey, I'll bet you guys are working hard," and I mean guys generically. I bet you guys are working hard. Hey, a little food would probably make it a little easier, wouldn't it?
Donuts and
Well,
pizza grease the
yeah.
wheels
I
to
mean,
anything, I'm sure.
yeah.
Well, I
I
actually
mean,
know a guy. I probably shouldn't say this. I won't say his name, but I know a guy who flies for a major air carrier now. The way he got an interview was he sent a bunch of pizzas to the headquarters, and he taped his resume to the box top of each one.
see, now that is clever. That is really clever.
Well,
Of
like I
course,
said, he flies for a major legacy carrier now, and well, the rest is history, I guess. I mean, he had to pass the interview, but the point is he got an interview, and oftentimes that's the hard part. So,
well, these days the interviews aren't near as difficult as they used to be.
Yeah.
I can remember years ago I did a pilot interview down at American in Dallas, and they ran me through the ringer. I mean, not just operationally, but physically. I remember I forgot what the test is where you blow into a tube to see what your lung capacity is. And they say, don't just keep blowing. I get it. I don't have any more air left. Okay, let's try it again. You sure you can't get just a little more? And at the end, I said, what the hell does my lung capacity and my ability to blow into this plastic tube have to do with flying an airplane? I mean, maybe, some doctor out there can tell us, but I just didn't know what it was. But again, how nice it would have been if somebody had just said, okay, guys, here's what you're going to experience today. And here's why we're doing it. Because if people understand why, I think they're a little more, a little less reluctant to go along with the program.
yeah, for sure. So what you're saying is decent communication.
Decent communication, not podcast. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that?
No,
Okay.
podcasts are cheap. It's cool.
Bada boom. I promised myself before we started this recording, I was going to get the sound effect, for the cymbal and the drums, but I forgot it. So
I think I have that. Hang on.
do you have it?
No, never mind. I don't
Oh.
have that.
Okay. Well, anyway, but no. So it's
Wait, no,
it's
hang
funny.
on. Button 6
Oh.
is supposed to be sad trombone. Hang on. I'm going to do this. I've never done this on the show before. Let's do it. It is this one. Oh, no, that's not the one. We don't want that one. I can't make it stop. Oh, God. Now it's over. Okay. Well, anyway, this is why we don't do sound effects on the show. Everybody.
Oh, okay. That's why they have very short clips of this kind of stuff, and it's really good. But I think it's I think flying in general is hard in these kinds of in these days. And I know it's not just you and I that feel that way. I think that people that have a lot of money, of course, just say, hey, I just get on the airplane and I go. And, I don't ever think about anything when I'm out flying. I'm just getting away from life. And I go, oh, please don't tell me that. Because, you're flying in one of the busiest terminal areas in the world. And to think that you're zoned out flying your SR-22, just it kind of frightens me a little bit.
I'm trying so hard not to make a zoned out Cirrus pilot joke right now. Really, I am. I'm sorry. I love the Cirrus. I really do. I love Cirruses. I really.
Oh, I know. Oh, I love the airplane too. I'm just speaking about the people that may be flying them. I mean, I have, so I think I can make that joke, can I? But hey, seriously, let's talk about your buddy Elliot Cox.
Yeah, for sure.
Whose comment about this is episode 100?
Yeah, episode 100, believe it
Wow,
or not.
yeah.
That's why you're here.
Now, so would listeners have already heard that, or will they not hear that till the end?
Yeah, well, so let's I'll tell you what, let's play Elliot's comments right now, and then we'll talk about them when we're done.
Oh, and Elliot, let me give you my address because you need to know where to send the cash.
Hey, Brandon. Elliot Cox here. Just wanted to stop by and say congratulations on 100 episodes. That's quite an accomplishment. And over the years, I've really enjoyed the conversations that you've had with Chad and Pam, along with the great discussions that you've had with Rob Mark and who I call the Frank Abagnale of aviation, Mr. Rich Pickett. And also, there's been some collaborations in the great East-West battle of ATC that you've had with the opposing bases guys. Those have always been really good. Of course, by far my favorites have been the episodes on Concorde, and especially the Spy Week series, all about the SR-71 and the people who were involved in the program. Fantastic just doesn't cover it. You put a lot of time and care into those episodes, and it really shows. So you've packed a whole lot of information into 100 episodes, and you've helped a lot of people in the process, myself included. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that without podcasting on a plane, I really don't think I would have been published in Plane and Pilot or Twin and Turbine magazines. Way back in July of 2019 on episode 52, you talked about a Facebook group that you're part of called 21st Century Aerospace Writers. And, of course, I immediately joined. I mostly lurked around there until July of 21 when I asked a question about, ways to bring my writing up to a more professional level. I got a lot of really good feedback from the group that boiled down to basically, well, what's stopping you from writing what you want and submitting it to us now? So not long after, Jeremy King, who's an airline pilot and a senior editor at Plane and Pilot, offered to read a piece that I'd written and give me some honest critique. He gave me a few notes and said, yeah, you should submit it. So I did some editing and submitted it, and Plane and Pilot published it in December of 21. I've published about a half dozen articles or so since then, with some more in the works, and that's all thanks to episode 52 of your podcast, so very much appreciate that. I'll also add that you were gracious enough to allow me to narrate that first article that I wrote called It Ain't Easy Doing Words Good on episode 97 of the podcast, and I gotta admit, it was quite a thrill to do that. Until I heard it, that is. Listening to my own voice bookended by your dulcet baritone made me rethink my narrating career. So, do me a favor. When you start talking after this, try not to sound so damn cool, would you? Thanks again for all the hard work you put into the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to the next 100. Change it to advisory. Good day.
Elliot, thank you for all the kind words there. That was lovely, and I'm glad that we could have helped you. But I mean, this is what actually prompted me to call Rob to do this today, was to talk about that and the writers group a little bit. And
he sold a story, a couple of stories. That is really impressive.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing.
Really
and I read one of them on the show. It was really good.
And Elliot, what do your career plans look like? Oh, he's not here. That's right. So he can't answer us. But you know what? When I created that Facebook group, 3 years ago was it, or 4 years ago?
Like
I don't
4 or
remember.
5 now.
I wasn't really sure exactly why I created it, other than I felt like we needed a place for new writers that are interested in aviation to come together and shoot the breeze and talk about what they want to do and why they can't or whatever. And it's really, I mean, there's actually 200 or 300 people, I think, that are on that group. And apparently Elliot is the recipient of some great advice, which means I didn't speak to him.
Well, that's because you're in your exalted administrator's chair looking down upon the new writers.
I think they call that the throne.
Yes, the throne. Is that where you scroll through Facebook?
Yeah, I guess, or something. I don't know. But seriously, it's really great that, and Elliot, sometimes the hardest part is coming up with the ideas. You just, people say, well, where do you come up with your ideas? I don't know to this day. When I just see something or I hear something and I go, that would make a good story. People would like to hear how you got from here to there. And, not just flying, but the journey from one part of your life to the next. And it's look at the cool stuff that I mean, look at Rich Pickett. I mean, he has done so many things. He's actually another fellow like me who can't really hold a job, but it also makes you the recipient of a lifetime of rich experiences that you can bring to a single idea and see something in it that nobody else does. And Elliot, that's how you do it. And the worst that can happen when you pitch an editor is that they say no. And that means maybe try somebody else, and just don't give up, which sounds like you didn't.
Yeah, no, he really didn't, and he's done great. And so I guess maybe real quick, if you're kind of new to this show, and I think we did that episode probably almost 50 episodes back, so like you said, about 4 years ago. The writers group, it's the 21st Century Aerospace Communicators, I think is the final name of it.
Correct. I think that's what it was,
on
yes.
Facebook. What you changed the name to make it Communicators so that I could participate as a lowly podcaster.
Oh, I wonder if I can go back and check. Well, never mind. You're still in it anyway.
Okay. Well, either way, just glad to be on the team. But yeah, if you're interested in a career in aviation journalism or communications of really any kind, except podcasting, don't do that. That one's full. But any other kind of communication, I recommend you go to Facebook and check out the group. It's got a lot of people in the industry, in aviation writing and otherwise, and there's a lot of really good advice there. And apparently people are actually getting gigs out of it, which is really cool.
And there are even a few people that know me that would say good things about me. Of course, that I've noticed that as I get older, that number is dwindling. I wonder why.
Are you
that
allowed to say
is.
nice things about other people on social media?
Well, it is difficult. It really is. But I don't know. I'm getting counseling for it. My wife's a shrink, and she's been helping me. It hasn't been working, quite honestly. 30 years later, she's still practicing.
Still practicing on you? I'm kidding.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
well-
not.
Well, Elliot, I just, from both of us, I'm sure, like, I'm very proud of your accomplishments, and I'm glad that in some small way or big way or whatever it was that the podcast and that the writers group was able to get you on your feet in the right place. And keep it up, man. Keep up the great content and the great writing. And anytime you want to submit your stories to this show, I already put one on there, and it was well received. So keep it up, and congratulations.
It's the same thing we were talking about in relation to being a trainer at the tower or a flight instructor. You gotta like helping people. You gotta like saying, "Hey, man, you can do this," or "Don't let that get you down. It's happened to all of us," and just hang in there, and maybe it's just a couple of simple tips that somebody comes back to you later and says, I tried that and it worked. And it's, and you just see how excited they are, or you hear how excited they are, and you go, yeah, it made my day. It's just, I don't do it for money, and neither do you. We just go, yeah, because we like doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, there's no money in it. I can assure you that. But yeah, and the funny part was, like you said in his comments, the advice that he got was, well, what's stopping you? Just submit
That's
it.
right.
And next thing you know, he's submitting works and they're getting picked up.
Well, and again, I always think the worst that they can do is that they might say no. And so what? Nobody died from no, unless it was maybe food or water, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want your surgeon to say that.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. But anyway, back in the world of things that are less important, yeah, the worst thing to do is say no. And guess what? Send it to another editor who might say yes. There's a lot of editors out there.
But, I want to tell you something that I heard in Elliot's comment that really rang a bell for me, Brandon, is that he mentioned something about your past episodes, and he mentioned the same ones that I did about the Concorde, the multiple episodes, and the SR-71. I mean, do you know what? Because I felt when I heard those that you were there. You were in the zone. You were finding stuff that was important to the listeners, and you were there, and you were bringing that to us, and we would have never known some of that if it hadn't been for you. And so, attaboy to you.
Yeah, that was the zone. I'll tell you what, I would give just about anything to feel the way I did that way back in Kalamazoo again. I mean, that was such an incredible experience. I still can't even, like, I'm struggling for words right now to even say how cool that was. But it was one of those things where even everybody at the museum, and there's actually been one, they did an event with them last year, I think. It was the first one back after the pandemic. And it was cool. But it was sort of like at the beginning of the Sandlot, where like, you know what, nothing will ever compare to that summer of '69. And that was like my sort of summer of '69 with the podcast moment. That was when they put that together and invited me to participate. It was crazy. Like I couldn't even believe it was happening at the time. And even the crews and everybody was like, we do this. Like, this is what we do now. We're retired. We go around the country. We share our stories. We talk at museums and in front of big groups of people and all that. And we have never done anything even remotely this cool. It was amazing. And, the bummer is anytime you try to recreate something like that, it's never going to be the same, like a second time. But at the same time, I'm glad that content is now out there so that we can all go back and listen to it. And I'm glad that, the museum has all that content to put into exhibits and things like that around the SR-71B that they actually have. And, that in the future, maybe the time will be right where something like that will happen again, where the planets will align in a certain way such that something that amazing will happen again. And, I just feel I'm like beyond honored that asked me to participate in that, because it took so much to put that together. And the fact that the founder of the museum has since passed away, and a lot of things have, I'm going to say a lot of things have changed, but some things have changed. A lot of the same people are still working there. It's all good. But if we could put something even half that cool together again, I'll be there in a second.
I think that sometimes I feel like that. I look at my desk and I see some awards sitting on it, and I think, man, how did I ever come? I mean, how did I ever come up with the stories that people thought enough of that said, wow, this year you are the special dude, and we're going to give you this award to tell you how special you are. And you think, man, I could never do that again. How would I ever? Well, the trick is you don't ever think about creating something to win an award or to win accolades. You just try and tell a great story. And sometimes you will, and sometimes you kind of miss the mark, but you go back and you say, yeah, it's all right. Well, next time I won't do that again. I'll try this. And then one day somebody says, oh my God, that thing was so incredible. Because you can't, you're right, you can't strive for it. You can't, somebody said once that, going viral is a result. It's not a strategy. I mean, you don't say, all right, team, we're going to create something that's going to go viral today. What would it be? It doesn't work like that. Who knows why things grab people the way that they do, but boy, when they do, it's a great thing. But it's not easy.
No, it's not. I mean, I think that's sort of one of those growth mindset kinds of things where, if you set out and your goal is, I want to win an award, or I want to make $10,000 from this one project, or I want to whatever, then it's probably not going to happen, actually. And you're just going to be spinning your wheels trying to find like tactics, maybe just to make it happen. And but it's not going to. I mean, maybe it will sometimes, but probably not. But the growth mindset thing about it is you have to love the process, right? And then it's because a lot of this stuff, especially when you're in the zone, like you're in a flow state, there's tons of research on that. And this podcast would be a great success if I could have the dude Stephen Kotler on the show. He's sort of the flow state guy. But there's a lot of research done on flow states, and there's also a lot of research coming out now about, your dopamine pathways and those things that make you strive for more, right? The things that make you love hard work and that makes you motivated to do and achieve and succeed and all those things. And to keep those pathways working well, it's like you can't reward every single achievement. You can't be like, oh, well, if you win the game, we're also going to get ice cream afterwards, and we're going to, watch TV and not do homework or whatever. Like you're stacking, or they call it dopamine stacking, like all these things that would give you a minor little dopamine hit, if you put too many of them together, it raises your baseline. And then when you come back down, you go back down under it. And so you have this sort of cool off time where it's not there anymore, and you're out of the zone for a lot longer. So if you can change your mindset to the process is what matters. Like, I don't work out because I want to be huge. I would work out because I enjoy the process, or I enjoy cycling, or whatever. Then that's where all that true value intrinsically comes from. And I mean, aviation's sort of that way. Like, we don't fly because we just really want to go to Kalamazoo, right? We fly because we love the process of aviating. Like, when I would go on a trip as a kid, I don't care where we're going as long as we get to fly there. That was like the process was the part I loved. And I think a good journalist, or a good anything, I guess is the point. When you're in that zone, like, you know it and you feel it, and you just need to love that process. And then eventually, like you said, the goal is like a symptom. It's the end result that will naturally come after you love and master the process. And it feels weird to say it that way, but like, once you do, that was it. But yeah, man, Kalamazoo, that was definitely a in the zone moment for me. And I'm sure you felt that way when, you were writing those articles that later on got awarded, and, and you get that airline job. You remember all those days in the trenches, sweating in the right seat of a 172. And, I mean, you probably don't want to go back and do them again, but that process is what got you there. So that airline job was the end result, but you got there because you loved sweating in a 172, or at least you told yourself you loved sweating in a 172 because you're getting paid to fly.
Well, but you know what I have found out about sweating? In fact, I'm going out to fly with a friend of mine in her 150 on Sunday, and I the last time we were out, I said, Madeline, have you noticed? I mean, she's an instructor too, and in fact, I gave her first half a dozen flying lessons, well, a long time ago. But it was gratifying to see her become an instructor and a bigwig in the 99s, which she is now. But I said, you know what? Did you notice that your airplane over the years, it shrunk because it's much more difficult to get into a 150 now than it used to be years ago. I said, you ought to have this looked at. And she kind of looked at me and smiled and said, I think you're making a joke, but, if this continues, you might want to talk to somebody about it. As in exercise, because the bones don't move the same. Trust me, young people, when you say, that won't be me someday. Yes, it will.
Nice. Excited to go flying again?
Yeah, so we're going out for my birthday. And but I was just going to mention something you were talking about with expectations and rewards and things like that. We've done that to ourselves as a society, I think. I mean, I look at, of course, my daughter is older than your kids, and there was a sign on because we live near her old grade school, and they have a motto on their sign. Lincolnwood, where every child's a superstar. And years later, when I think she was in maybe third year of high school or something, I don't know, we were out walking the dog and we went past that, and I said, yes, good old Lincolnwood, where every child's a superstar. She said, Dad, you know what? That's a load of crap. And I said, well, why do you say that? She said, because everybody's not a superstar. If everybody's a superstar, then how can anybody be a superstar? I mean, sometimes you've got to fail to get better, don't you? And I said, I think you just figured out the secret to life. But also, I think that works into the social media we were talking about before. I found that when I was in the hospital last year, and I couldn't... I was in the ICU for a week. I might as well just tell people I don't care, but I got out of it. I'm here. But I'd watch my phone and look at things and look at everybody else that was doing so many things, and they were apparently having so much fun, and I couldn't go anywhere. And honestly, it didn't make me feel better. I think I felt worse.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, you talk about being like, what are you going to do about it? I mean, it really puts in perspective when you're actually there and there literally is nothing you can do about it. You're hooked up to machines in the hospital, right? You think it makes you crazy when you have freedom and autonomy? Wait till you're in that state, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a problem I've seen with people that, I mean, we've all seen this. I mean, people are crossing the street with their phone in their hands, and they're pushing baby carriages with their phone in their hand. They're walking the dog with their phone in their hand. They're driving with the phone in the hand.
I'm podcasting with a phone in my hand right now. What'd you say?
Yeah. You could call it podcasting on your phone. That could be your new outlet.
Doesn't have quite the same ring to it,
Yeah,
but I don't
probably
care because
not.
I'm on Instagram anyway.
But I still wonder why, people haven't realized that you can't live your life through somebody else. I mean, it might be fun the first time to watch someone, a picture of someone having taken a flight or, that kind of thing. But I am so sick to death of watching videos because somebody bought a new GoPro camera and stuck it on the ceiling behind them, and I'm watching them out there doing lazy eights or turns around a point or whatever, or making an approach into San Diego or something. I mean, it's like, oh God, go out and do it yourself. Experience it for yourself. Don't try to do it on the phone via somebody else. It's crazy. You'll never leave your house.
Well, attention is the new currency.
I'm
Attention.
sorry. What did you say? I wasn't paying attention.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
That was a joke. See, that's where I need the. No, you're right. Attention is the new currency. I mean, and it misses an important point that you have to ask why. Why would someone present me with this story now? What's in it for the right, the left, the middle, the communists, the socialists, the liberals, the whatever, to present this story now? What do they get from this? Is there some other side to it? And I think most people are so used to just saying, well, I heard it. I mean, look at this day today, this week. It's the second week of the hearings for a particular television network. And some of what came out of it from the 2020 election. And oh my God, people have lined up on both sides because they know they're right. See, but the trouble is if you can't look at it and say, well, they can't both be right. Somebody's got to be wrong somewhere. Maybe if it's even just a little bit of gray on this side and a little gray on that side. But not in our world. Everything is black and white. My social media is the greatest thing in the world. Everybody should follow me. I have 8 bazillion followers on Twitter. Or I don't even know if you can go that high, can you?
Oh, you can. Elon says you can.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
And
there you
actually, the
go.
more followers you have, the more correct and important what your opinion is and what you have to say is.
Well, and I don't want your listeners to get the wrong impression. I'm not trying to be cynical about life, although it may sound like that. I'm just saying, for God's sake, ask some questions. Don't take everything at face value. I don't care who it is, because you don't know what's behind them and what's motivating them to give you that message at that moment in time. It may be completely benign, or there may be something behind it. And you don't have to be cynical to think like that. I think that's being realistic, and I don't think we're realistic enough sometimes.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the mark of a true journalist, actually, just the facts and, minimum. I mean, I guess you can never completely get rid of bias, but minimum bias, right?
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Oh, youngster of the media world. There was a TV show many years ago in which a particular police officer said, the facts, ma'am, just the facts. And if you know what that police officer's name was or the name of the show, I will, What will I do? I didn't think about that part.
And buy your own
I will be
Letterman's
really
jacket.
impressed.
No, it wasn't. It was. I was want to say Get Smart, but that was the spoof. But it was actually Dragnet.
Oh my God. And you know what, folks? That was not a sound effect. That was actually me moving my hands together, flapping air, and it makes that really cool sound to say, "Attaboy, Brandon." So I just thought I would clear that up.
What do I win?
What do you win? You could have
What I win is you tell me what his name was, actually, because I forgot. I remember the show, but I forgot the name.
Sergeant Joe Friday.
Joe Friday. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't remember his partner's name, though, but every good cop has to have a straight man, or not a straight man, but the officer that's not quite as bright as the star. And they always work like that.
There's so many
but
jokes hiding in here. I can't even.
I-
I'm not going to touch that one. I'm not going to do it.
But you know what? I'm serious about this. I mean, I'm not just being a funny person now, although some people definitely think he's funny. But I don't think that's what they meant.
That's called delusion, Rob.
Yeah, it is. So how are we going to get you back up in the air? Have you been flying at all?
I was supposed to fly the Epic last week, and then the plane broke, and then the weather came in, and those crazy storms we had in California, those were no joke, and it was just like a complete non-starter. So as of now, I have not flown an airplane in a year, and I was really going to do it. I really was, but then that's kind of what happened. So I'm going to get back in it somehow, hopefully in the Epic, but if not, then I'll do what I can, but we'll make it happen. So
Well, I think that you have to be a little patient with yourself, because when you're as into the industry as you were for a while when I first met you, I mean, instructing and flying in the turbine airplanes and controlling and training, and it's almost like there are circuits in your brain that kind of burn out, and you just need to give them a little rest to come back. And then one day you just go, yeah, let's do that. I think that'd be fun. And then suddenly you're back up there and you go, yeah. And you know what? It may take ages, but nobody's going to be able to force you. You have to go at your own pace. And, but it'll happen when it happens. And I have to admit that when I was at the Chicago TRACON a couple of weeks ago for a visit, I sat there and watched these control, because they have, if you've never been to a TRACON, I mean a busy one like SoCal or NorCal or the New York TRACON or Chicago or Atlanta. I mean, alone looking at how they break the airspace up so that they can get unbelievable numbers of arrivals in without conflicting with each other, and still shove departures out beneath them and make it all work. It's just really cool to watch that. And I looked at it and I said, I miss that. I don't miss working for the FAA, but I do miss the challenge of working in a radar room and making it all come together, because at the end of the day, you don't need anybody to say, wow, man, you did a hell of a job working East Arrivals, because you know it. You know it because you made it all work. And that's the true, but again, it's a lot like being a pilot. There are people that learn the movements of the controls and learn how to work the radios and shove the throttle in and work, but are they really into it? Do they live and breathe this stuff? Is it part of their soul? Not all of them. Some of them are just going through the motions. But for the people that are just into it, it's great. And that's what I love about flying too, is that it's bringing so many different elements together from so many different places in in your knowledge of aviation, but also in the world, in your life, and it all comes together, and you go, yeah, I did that. That was pretty cool.
Did it from love of the game, man.
Yeah. Oh, that love of the game. There you go. Wasn't that a movie?
No, because I'm going to name the episode that, and I don't want to get sued.
Okay. All right.
So no,
I
it
like
wasn't.
that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Sorry. I didn't even say that. I'd cut that out anyway.
Yeah. No one's even going to hear it. I promise. All right, man. Well, thank you for being on the show so many times. I mean, everybody loves your contributions. I love when we do these. These are so much fun, and this is no exception. And now that we're kind of back-ish, I guess. Well, whatever it is, I'll leave it at that.
So,
but I look forward to many more.
Well, if people don't like what I said, should they write to me directly at Jetwine, or should they write to you directly?
Yeah,
at
if you
Podcasting
love
on a
what you
Plane?
heard, then Brandon at Podcasting on a Plane. And if you're angry and mad and want to do horrible things, then
Rob at
at
jetwine.com.
jetwine.com.
Yeah,
is where
I
you can
got
send
you.
that.
I see the way you did that. That was very cleverly handled. Hey, listen, seriously, thank you for inviting me, and I hope people understand this whole episode's about passion. It's not about whining and moaning and cynicism and all the other stuff. It's about passion.
Yeah, no, it really is. And that's what used to make my world go around, and that's what's going to make it go around again, because that's when you're in the zone, and that's when you do the good work.
And in the no, I'm not. I better not do that. You're right, Brandon, and I'm glad you called on me to help for episode 100.
This episode also wouldn't be complete if we didn't have Chad in it, would it? So next month, I get to start flying the Epic with Chad, the one that's owned by our secret turboprop owning mutual friend. And boy, am I excited. That thing is so cool. I hope it lives up to my expectations, because I got high expectations for that airplane. But it always reminds me every time I go to fly with Chad and something new and different and fun. That very first flight we did way, way back in the day, I think it was 2007 or 8. I think I told this story on the show one time. I woke up actually in Vegas at my family's house, and I flew Cessna 206 back to a local San Diego airport, got in my car, grabbed some lunch, drove to my airport, watched him and the secret turboprop owning friend when he was a secret Cessna Columbia 400 owning friend, and watched them land. They came, they picked me up on the ramp. We flew that thing up to Van Nuys, landed on 16 right, and the rest was history. It was a great friendship, and here we are about to fly an Epic together. So it was one of the most popular guests of all time on the show. There's no way I'd let this one go by without having Chad on here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, man. Actually, you know what? Check this out. I decided this is going to be episode 100, so I think it's about time we do something here. You ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Hang on. There we go. Never done that on a recording before, so figure it's about time, right?
That's right.
What you been up to, man?
Oh, just flying a ton, teaching a bunch. This week, I did my TSA security awareness recurrent, my DC airspace. I didn't have to do it because I've already done it, but I did it again just because I know there's new stuff there, so I can fly into DC. Then I did my drone, my unmanned aircraft drone, whatever you want to call it, recurrent. I don't have to do that because I'm a Part 61 certificate holder with a current flight review, but I did that anyway. And then I renewed my CFI certificate as well online. So I got all that done this week.
I just started from fresh. You have to do any of that for 2 more years now for most of those?
Yeah. A year for a lot of it and 2 years for the CFI.
Cool. We'll mark the month, September. That's Chad's fun month.
Yeah. Really, actually, I get a little bit of a bonus because you can go 90 days. With a CFI renewal, you can do it 90 days before the expiration date. So mine doesn't expire till the last day of October. So I get 2 years and a month.
The problem is with that is I always remember that rule every 2 years, and mine's going to be coming up in June. So in March, I'm going to go onto the website and I'm going to start, but somehow or other, I'm probably not going to finish it until June anyway. So I don't know, whatever.
Oh my God. I spent the last 3 days like sitting there refreshing the thing every 10 minutes so I could get like a 97 on all the tests.
There you go, Chad's keys to winning right there.
That's right. The the key is to not go insane while you're trying to outweight the 16 hours of classroom.
Yeah, it's funny because in air traffic land, like we have a similar thing where you have to redo your training from time to time to be an on-the-job training instructor, but it's not every 2 years. And I had gone, I think, like 10 without having to redo anything. But what I always find weird is that, in the pilot community, it's like, okay, every 2 years, you go onto the website, whichever one you use, and you pay the money and you spend 16 hours doing a really comprehensive like CBI, right? Computer-based instruction. And then a certificate goes through a FSDO somewhere and you get it sent and it's great. And it makes a lot of sense. But, I work for the same FAA, a different organization of it, ATO versus regulatory enforcement. But I mean, we have to go do a 3-day class and they don't run them that often because obviously you have to send someone in to teach who's qualified to teach and then teach a 3-day class. So it's almost like if you go to one of those in-person flight instructor refreshers that like AOPA or whoever does over the weekend. And that's fine. But at the same time, I still can't quite figure out why we don't have an online one that we can just go downstairs and spend half of or 1 or 2 or whatever shifts downstairs doing basically the same thing. Because I don't see why it's any different, but whatever. So I'm still waiting for a class, so I can't even refresh my own. Like I can't even go log onto a website and become an on-the-job training instructor again. So it's, I don't know, one of those things you can't explain, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of really fun, snarky comments about why that is. And actually, let them flow. I can't wait to hear them. But that's the world I'm in. So good times. I'm glad you got yours done, though.
Well, it seems like it'd be easier for someone that would be an ATC because you could sit there on the computer and have a CBT program interactively, do your thing, and you're good. You don't even have to leave the ground. Where the CFI, I mean, here we do that on the ground online, but yet you're in the sky.
Yeah, no, I know. It doesn't make sense now, does it? I'm sure everybody's really
No,
surprised
that
about
makes
that.
zero
Really
sense.
surprised. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, so now that you're all re-upped, what are you going to go do with all that stuff?
Oh shoot, I don't know. Hopefully, I'm not going to fly to Washington D.C. because, whatever. And I haven't flown there in a while anyway. The CFI, well, yeah, I use that all the time. What else did? Oh, the drone deal. I haven't flown a drone since I got certified because it's not as fun as to fly one if you're not. And then what was the other one I got?
I don't even remember. I lost track, man.
I got another one too. So, anyways, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it all, but the CFI I use all the time. The rest of it is what it is. The drone deal, I think that's a good thing to have is the unmanned because it's going to become and is quickly becoming more highly regulated all the time. So if you don't have your unmanned, one day you're going to wish you had it because that's where this thing's going.
When you got that a while back, you kind of gave me a little spiel about I should probably do that too, and I never ended up doing it. But it's pretty easy to get an unmanned, whatever it is, on just slapped on your certificate, right? So what do you need to do? Like if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, you know what? Good call. I should go put that on my certificate. What does somebody need to go do?
Oh, absolutely. You can go on the FAA ST website. You can take their class, and then you take the test afterwards. You got to go on IACRA, fill it all out, uh, and then have an instructor, DPE. You can have a CFI, a DPE, et cetera, sign you off on IACRA, and then you can get your unmanned certificate as long as you're a Part 61 certificate holder.
Okay, so it just seems like a little bit of paperwork, and next thing you know, you're a drone captain.
Right. Now, if you're not, there's a little bit more that you have to go through to get to get the unmanned license. If you don't currently hold a Part 61 certificate. And if you have a 61 certificate in a current flight review, you need not do a unmanned recurrent. However, every time I do my CFI recurrent, I do another unmanned recurrent just for the heck of it. I've done several unmanned sign-offs, so just to make sure I'm up on everything.
Well, we're here because this is episode 100, right? And I can't believe I actually made 100 of these things, although it should have been a lot more if I actually made these every week. But everybody knows it's maybe once a month if we're lucky. But anyway, you are, I think you've been on the show the second most out of anybody, second to Rob Mark. So there needs to be some sort of Saturday Night Live-esque, like a 5-timers club or something like that for you.
Oh my gosh, I was thinking about live from the podcast. It's Saturday night type thing for episode 100 last night when I was thinking about what to do for the episode. Literally, I was thinking about that.
I'm going to edit one in just because you said that.
You got to do it. I was thinking, okay, and like live from New York, it's Saturday night, but except we're not in New York, and we wouldn't do that kind of thing because you're in California and I'm in Texas. But live from wherever we're at, it's Saturday night. Technically, it's Thursday, but
nobody will know the difference. Live from the internet, it's 7:23 on Thursday.
That's right.
I'll make it up to Saturday one of these days. Well, so I've actually had a little bit of feedback about, of course, the show. People are sending things in that I can, share throughout here. And one that we shared earlier in the show was a really long time listener who you were mentioned as one of his favorite ones, right up there with Spy Week and Concord Week and some of the stuff I've talked about with Rob that got him into actually being published in magazines that people have heard of. So I think what people like is when you come on here and we just hang out and have a really good time, as if we've just cracked open a beer and we're talking serious, but at the same time, we're having a good time doing it. And I think that's why we've been friends for so long, and that's why I love having you on the show, and that's why everybody listening also loves the episodes that we do together. But I want to hear from you. I mean, you keep saying yes to coming back on the show. Why?
Why? It's a good time. I love talking about aviation. I love I love aviation humor, but I love the seriousness of aviation. I like talking about all the aspects that I think I like to talk about. I think people would like to listen to as well. Whether it's we're talking stuff like 121 stuff, or if we're talking about CS stuff, or we're talking about ATC stuff, or no matter what. I think you and I have a good combination together because I think we're exposed to a number of different facets uh, in the aviation world, and we can come together and we can put those together and explain that out there in the world to people that that want to listen or or would like a perspective from an area where you don't necessarily get that from someone that like you that's been in ATC for so long, and as well as a pilot, and for somebody like me who is just a pilot, but I've been in the single engine piston world, the single engine turbine world, or turboprop world, you could say, and the turbojet world, single and multi and blah 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 blah. And we have a broad base of perspective to talk about, and it's a lot of fun. And then we get our two personalities together, which is great. Because we have a lot of fun flying together, we have a lot of fun talking together, we have a lot of fun texting together, and then we can put that all in a broadcast, and people can enjoy it.
Yeah, you know what the bummer is, though? You know what Pam told me?
What did she tell you?
She likes your voice better.
Well, yeah, she does. And then there's somebody down in Austin that likes it too.
Well, I haven't been to Austin, so I guess I got nothing on you there. But all right. Well, you're welcome to keep coming back on the show. And the more I think about it, I think we should have a segment. And I finally decided what it's going to be called when we have you on the show regularly. You ready? Chilling with Chad.
Oh, excellent.
And here's what we got to do. So I need people to send in stuff so that we can actually have topics for you and I to use that sort of broad base to talk about. And that's kind of what I want to do. Like, not just straight Q&A all the time, but I think if somebody could lob up like a really good discussion point, and then you and I could just go to town on it for however long it takes. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe I can even send you some
we can
shorts.
Call it with Chilling with Chad, or we can call it, just topics or topics.
Topics or topics. That sounds like another Saturday Night Live skit.
Exactly.
I'll talk like Linda Richmond.
Yeah, one of my favorite skits is it's I think it's the Saturday Night Live episode, but it's Matt Shat, Crocs with Socks.
Oh, I've heard of that one. I haven't seen it. That sounds funny though.
You have got to go see that. And anybody out there that's listening has got, if you have a sense of humor at all, you'll love it. It's phenomenal.
All right, so let's do this. What's the funniest thing that's happened to you flying lately then?
The funniest?
Yeah, anything funny happened to you out there?
I'm trying to think. I did a contract flight from Oklahoma City out to Santa Ana, and that was, I mean, that was good. I don't know that anything about it was funny. I flew the Citation 10. The guy that I fly with, we did it together. So I flew. He sat in the right seat, and then we airlined home. We had a good time doing it. One of the funnier things that did happen, I guess you could say it's funny, uh, was on the landing out in Santa Ana. It was pretty darn good, and we felt that it was one of the better landings that's happened in that airplane in a long time. So that between the two of us, we thought that was funny.
Those must have been some bad landings before that, man.
Uh, I I cannot speak on that. I can only speculate.
Why? What was wrong with the plane?
I can't tell you if anything was. I mean, the airplane was fine. We had a nice airplane. Actually, my initials are on the airplane, Charlie Foxtrot, which is cool. But anyways, we just speculated based on the crowd reaction at the time of touchdown that it was pretty good.
No, jeez.
So we laughed at it. It was kind of funny.
All right. Well, moving forward with the show, Chad. I mean, obviously you're going to be here a lot more, and that's great, and I look forward to it. But I don't know, what do you want to do? What do you think we should do with the show? What should happen? What should we change? Should we just leave it the same, or should things go in new and better directions? What do you think?
I don't know that directions are new or better. I think they're different and they're interesting. Um, you, I think the show's been in a great direction the whole time that we've done it and that you've done it. I think one of the things that would be awesome is like you said, is that if we had listeners come in and say, hey, this is what we want to talk about on the next show. We want to hear you guys talk about this. We want to hear Chad's perspective on XYZ and Brandon's perspective on XYZ as well. And we want those two perspectives to come together and see where, two different points could make more sense to us, or blah 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 blah. I think that would be fun. uh, Things like that. Any topics. I don't care if it's ATC phraseology, if it comes back to airplane maintenance. What do you think's better? You think a TBM's better or a Boeing 777? Has anybody ever ridden in one of those new Airbus A220s? What did you think of it? To something like, do you think a Husky lands better than a 46 Cub, or has anybody ever flown one of those?
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, all right. Start sending stuff in, everybody. Send it in.
And then we can talk about cool things like airspace or whatnot and this and that. And I was looking at a chart the other day and I saw this, or I saw the rocket ship markings on the space station deals, and one of them got in the way of one of the airports that I was trying to go to, and what happens then, or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool. All right, man. Will you go on any fun trips soon, or what are you up to tomorrow?
I'm going to Vegas tomorrow.
Nice. For yourself or for someone else?
Well, for myself. American Airlines is flying me out there, so that should be fun.
You're Platinum Pro now, aren't you?
Unfortunately, I'm Platinum Pro on American, so I get to see all the fun stuff every day that everybody else is going through.
Yeah, tell us some like what?
Well, any of the breakdowns backing up from the gate, and then having to go sit out on the ramp for an hour and a half, and then they decide they can't pull back up to the gate, so then they have to pull the manual gate up. You got to walk down the plank, and they've got a couple of specials on the airplane that have to have assistance off in the manner of a wheelchair. So then they have to figure out how to do that, and then I've got the first officer operating the wheelchair because the people in the Santa Barbara airport don't have the capacity to do that. So and then hats off obviously to the first officer for stepping up and doing that stuff. But no, it's been exciting, and then everybody else stands out in the sun while they try to figure out what to do with the line, and they don't have any personnel at the ticket counter to help all the people that just got off the flight of the Airbus 319 that they canceled to Dallas. And if you're not like us and you're not on the app or you're not calling customer service and you just fly once in a while, then you're stuck and you don't know what to do and blah, 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 blah. So everybody's standing there for hours while, the fortunate few get on the regional jet that's going to Phoenix to grab a Dallas and get back by midnight. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there for a couple days. But yeah, it's been fun.
Well, I hope your Vegas trip goes better.
Oh yeah, no, actually overall, it's actually been pretty darn good. We've had some really positive experiences. A lot of the stuff has been, early outs from the gate and on times, but the stuff that has not gone correctly has really gone south.
Bummer. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show even just for a short minute so we can talk about this. But I guess thanks for doing it all these times. And as we go forward, here's to many more.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, man. Take care. We'll see you later.
All right.
All right. Well, if you stayed this long, I know you're a super listener of the show, and I thank you so much for sticking around through thick and thin. I want to give some special thank yous and shout outs. And the first one, we've already mentioned him, but what the heck, let's do it again. Captain Jeff, you gave me my first bump on the show, and you helped me put the show on the map. Max Trescott for working with me to put together some of the coolest collaboration episodes we've done on here. RH, same thing. Great collaborations and all your wonderful contributions to help teach the flying community about what we do on the ATC side every day. Rob Mark for all of his wonderful contributions to the show over time, and honestly for just being there for me for some pretty rough times. Chad for all the amazing flying adventures we've had and some of the great people he's introduced me to. I want to thank the Kalamazoo Air Zoo Museum staff, particularly Nikki Statler, for being the glue that held that entire Spy Week event together. Whatever she gets paid is definitely not enough. And on the same line, there's the daughter of the Air Zoo's founder, Jamie Ploon, who at the end of the day is the one who put me on that wonderful crew that recorded the whole Spy Week event, and for her generous support of the show over the years. Jamie, thank you so much. Captain John Hutchinson for just generally being the man and for being so agreeable to share his incredible stories and history on the show time and time again. It's not often you get a retired Concorde captain BBC presenter on your show, and for me standing here in front of this mic, that was a true honor. If you want to know more about Captain Hutchinson, make sure to buy his book, Wind Beneath My Wings. No, not the song, the book. The link is in the show notes. Brian Shepard, also known as Biggles, because Nothing by Chance is actually the story of his life, and who knows, maybe we'll get into that on one of these future episodes too. But again, go check out the Nothing by Chance episode, narrated by him. It's a true great modern aviation story. And I want to thank all the patrons who support the show. And lastly, if you've ever wondered where all the infectious beats and backgrounds come from, the artist's name is Dama Beats. The show wouldn't sound the same without his work. People often ask me if I support others on Patreon, and of course the answer is yes. I wouldn't ask you to do that if I didn't do the same thing. I'm a patron of the Airline Pilot Guy Show, Aviation News Talk with Max Trescott, and of course, Opposing Bases. Each of them actually also supports this show. And if you'd like to be in that esteemed company, head on over to Patreon or podcastingonaplane.com. You can click on Support the Show. You better believe there's a link in the show notes. Anyway, before I switch you to departure, I just have to say one more thing. I don't know what the future holds, but more than anything, the closing out of the accident saga and the making of this episode have been some of the greatest things so far for me to get back on track. And more than anything, I want to thank all of you who stuck it out listening to what little content I made for you these last few years. And whatever happens next, I'm just glad to have you with me here in the Delta, where if nothing else, there's always a story. So, for the 100th time, that's all for now. Your frequency change is approved, and make sure to report back on this frequency for the next episode. Good day.
The Podcasting on a Plane podcast is presented for entertainment purposes only. Brandon's comments and those of his guests, the website's content, and any of the social media, etc., are not part of his official responsibility as a controller or as an FAA employee. The views and opinions you hear on the podcast are his, and those of his guests, and not necessarily that of the FAA. Also, while he's a CFI, he's not acting as your CFI, nor is he your mechanic, your doctor, your shrink, or your spouse. This podcast is presented for entertainment, camaraderie, and fun, but is in no way, shape, or form professional advice or legal counsel. If you're in need of professional advice, get some from somewhere more appropriate than a podcast, no matter how good this one may be.